Blog Talk Radio.
Are you ready? The champ is here! It's just a man! Give me a hell yeah! What the rock is cooking? To be the man, you have to be the man! Big bubble pump! And you hooked up!
Falling!
Holla! In the air! Woo, woo, woo! Cup of coffee in the big day.
And yes, we're coming to you from the Blog Talk Radio studios in the heart of Hudson County. Folks, you know it's always in Union City and Weehawken. Collectively, ladies and gentlemen, we are working the marks here. And, of course, I am New Jersey's premier and now 7-time award-winning journalist, Fernando Uribe. And he is New Jersey's premier wrestling analyst. And since it is December, our resident Grinch here, the PBR superstar, the illustrious, the glorious Patrick Rivera. What's going on, brother?
I'm a mean one. I'm a Grinch. I fucking hate Christmas. That's what's going on. But it's. I feel like it's been a while. It's been about 3 weeks now since we were last on.
Yeah, man. Yeah. We were talking about
Wow.
Crown Jewel. And so everyone, again, happy December to you all. And, of course, shoot us an email to our inbox, workinthemarks@gmail.com. Shout out to our great guy, Dee Rotten, who always looks over our inbox. And, of course, you know, when we think about
Fancast Media as well. Big shout out to Fancast Media.
Yep, Fancast Media, obviously, partnering with us here on Blog Talk Radio every week. You can download episodes, folks. Listen to them anywhere, anytime at blogtalkradio.com/workinthemarks, all one word. Of course, hit us up on Instagram at working_the_marks. And, of course, check out our own Instagrams, respectively. For the PBR superstar, check him out at Paddy Rican. That's PADDYRICAN. Check out my own Instagram at the Fernando Zone. And, of course, ladies and gentlemen, always check us out on Twitter. Thank the Lord that Elon Musk is making it a forum for free speech once again. You can check out the PBR superstar at his Twitter at Patrick SKVM, and my own Twitter at the Fernando Zone as well. Folks, once again, shoot us an email, what you like about the show, what you don't like. I know it's the holiday season, but don't be shy. Tell us what you love about the show as we continue to, go into 2023 in just a few weeks. Really, we're coming on almost a full calendar year since we started the program, and I could not be more excited. What's going on, PBR?
Wow. Well, first and foremost, I'd like to say that on this show, we don't like Hitler. Fuck Hitler. And fuck Nazis. So
right.
I'd like to get that out of the way first and foremost. But we're proud Americans over here. We don't sympathize with losers. But yeah, it's been a while. It's good to be back with you. I know you were busy. You're also you're a college professor, as we all know. You've got your brand of media, and you were on an Indiana Jones trip. I think you were chasing a Rolling Stone, which, from what I hear, is Indiana Jones' favorite band. So it's great to have you back from your adventures. I was saving a bunch of cats, that were trapped up in a tree, noble stuff like that, helping old ladies cross, maybe, stealing some money out of their wallet. But, just really good to be back here and really happy to be able to chop things up, all things professional wrestling and sports entertainment with you again, Professor.
That's right, brother. And again, let's get right to it here. Big stuff on the news cycle, man. Different websites this week, bro, reporting, starting with Wrestling Inc., PW Insider, that Cody Rhodes' recovery is going very well. The former AEW star has been working heavily with some top-level trainers to gain size and strength in a bid, apparently, to weigh a very crisp 240 pounds upon his return. The report also added this week that he's back to normal in regard to his training and his gym work. Despite the apparent progress, though, Pat, there's still no word officially on Cody Rhodes' return date. However, multiple media outlets are indicating that Cody Rhodes could indeed be one of those surprise entrants at the Royal Rumble coming up next month in San Antonio. Interestingly, though, many reports suggest that Rhodes' natural return to television would certainly reignite his last feud with Seth Rollins, who he had 3 classic matches this year, all match of the year candidates as far as I'm concerned, on television before being written off due to the injury. It might pose to be a difficult scenario, though, because, again, if Cody returns as a babyface, which we all anticipate he will be, it might be a problem because right now it seems like Seth Rollins is considered the top babyface in the company currently. So that could be a little interesting, though. But before putting the cart before the horse, good to hear that Cody is making progress on his rehab, bro.
Yeah, man. Cody is just an immense talent. He's also a fellow Latino. He's one of your one of your half of your paisanos there. A Cubano. And just really happy to hear that Cody's been on that great road to recovery. I mean, the possibilities are endless now, especially now that WrestleMania season is going to be kicking into high gear. So I couldn't be more excited to see Cody return. I'm really, really interested to see how Triple H is going to use him, and where they're going to get him to where he's got to be for WrestleMania. So happy to hear that he's coming back sometime soon. Whether he picks it up with Rollins or not, I mean, it would be interesting. There's a few scenarios you could think of. Maybe Cody comes out when Seth's like one of the last guys in the Rumble and Cody eliminates him. That would be huge. You do a Luger Bret Hart with Rocky and Cody. That would be interesting too. How Rocky's going to be involved in the title match remains to be seen as well. But, common sense would indicate, hey, he's probably going to end up being in the Royal Rumble, right, if we had to really guess, especially if he's going to be taking on Roman. So there's a lot of questions. There's a lot of intrigue. If Cody doesn't necessarily win the Rumble, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world for him, being that they're going to have the Money in the Bank ladder match at WrestleMania. So, again, there's a lot of different ways we can go with this. But all in all, I'm very excited to hear that Cody Rhodes is on the mend and, fully recovered and now, fixing to get back on television any day now.
Oh, absolutely. And staying along the lines of the Royal Rumble, Bleacher Report today, Pat, reporting that Triple H is looking at Rocky winning the Rumble to set up his eventual showdown with Roman Reigns. We've talked about this before, bro. We've dissected it like, how do we get to WrestleMania in Hollywood in April, and how do we incorporate Dwayne Johnson up against his cousin? And, we've talked about this. It seemed like, and again, not to suspend disbelief or make it anticlimactic, because we all know the marks and all the crybabies on the internet are going to say, oh, that's just too predictable. But again, if we're going to be going by what we've been used to, again, the Rumble winner gets the title shot. Okay, that's the way it's always. Now, again, not to say that Paul can't, throw a wrench into the equation and not swerve us, but maybe just change it up a little bit. I get all that, but that's what we've been preconditioned to. The winner of the Rumble, since, trivia question for everyone at home, since 1993, that was the first year that the Rumble winner was granted the title shot. Real quick, Air, who was that first inaugural Rumble winner, man, to get the title shot? You remember, Pat?
If I recall correctly, I want to say it's Brett. If I'm thinking right. But I'm pretty sure, wasn't it Hacksaw? Well, Hacksaw Jim Duggan was the first Royal Rumble winner, right?
Yes, in 1988. Again, non-televised. It was on USA, not on pay-per-view yet. But the very first year that the Rumble winner, again, the previous year, the title was vacant. And Ric Flair won the undisputed title because it was vacated due to what happened at the Survivor Series a couple months back. But in 1993, at the time, Vince implemented, creatively that the Rumble winner would get the title shot at WrestleMania. Challenging Bret Hart that year in Las Vegas was Yokozuna. So a little trivia for our fans at home.
Oh, that's right. I thought Yoko was the champ going in. My bad. Yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah. He was the champion the following year in WrestleMania, at WrestleMania 10.
Right. I got my WrestleManias confused.
So
gotcha.
Since, the first year in 1993, we've been pretty much conditioned to be, hey, okay, the Rumble winner gets the title shot at WrestleMania. And it seems like today, Bleacher Report, leaking that, that's what Paul's looking at. Not a surprise there, man. It's kind of what we expect. Again, if Rocky's going to challenge him, it's got to be him winning the Rumble. It just can't be him showing up. Again, you could have him just show up and challenge him. But, logistically, the way we've been used to it, it would make sense that Rocky is a surprise entrant in the Rumble, maybe number 30. Again, not a lot of work in there. Get in, get out, win the Rumble. That sets up the showdown with Roman Reigns at WrestleMania in Hollywood a couple months later. Again, no surprise there by Bleacher Report breaking that today.
No, not at all. And by the way, getting back to Yoko, man, what a big 2 years 93 and 94 were for him. You know what I mean?
Yep.
He was just top of the world, doing his thing, involved in big stuff.
Well, 95.
And the trust that Vince had in him,
Hey, 95 too. If you remember at WrestleMania 11 in Hartford, he teamed with Owen Hart to win the tag titles. So that was a good stretch, yeah.
Yeah. Owen was, I used to love Owen on commentary when he would talk about that period. He'd refer to Yokozuna as a fat slob. It was just great stuff from the late, great King of Hearts there and the late, great Yokozuna. But, Rocky has to win it. I mean, again, it's what we've been conditioned to expect. For me personally, I don't know. There's a million ways you could have gone with it. This is the way they choose. At the end of the day, whether it's, predictable or not, and the most predictable people in the world, marks, are complaining about how this is predictable and anticlimactic when literally everything they complain about is predictable and anticlimactic. But, they should really just enjoy it for what it is, man, because this is going to be produced very, very well. And The Rock is going to come in. I don't know if he'll be 30. He might be. He might be 27. He might be 26. Maybe they'll create a new stat for him. Who knows? It depends on his conditioning. Obviously, right now he's probably hitting a ring. He's got some agents with him. He's probably got Brian Kendrick and other people working with him. Maybe even Kurt Hennig's son, who is technically in the ring a very gifted wrestler. Not as charismatic as his father, obviously, but very gifted. So Rocky's going to put in the hard yards. He's going to come prepared. He's not going to make a fool of himself, and especially for something as big as this. And I'll tell you what, people will complain, they'll bitch, they'll moan, they'll bellyache, they'll think that some other, indie company with the multi-million-dollar budget is better. But at the end of the day, you're going to still watch it, you're still going to enjoy it, and you're still going to be there, and WWE's going to knock it out of the park like they've been continuing to do.
No, you're right. And to your point before about the marks complaining, if Paul decided to not give the Rumble winner the title shot, they'd bitch and moan. Oh, wait a second. For 30 years, the Rumble winner wins the title shot. What do you mean? Why are we disregarding that now? So it's a no-win situation because it seems like marks are going to, you're right, marks are going to complain and they're going to bitch and moan because, again, it's like they live to bitch and they bitch to live. I mean, I say that on my other media shows about certain people ideologically. I think this applies to marks as well. So let's see what happens. But again, no surprise there. Bleacher Report leaking that today. We'll see what happens again as Rumble season is, coming up soon. Again, there's no pay-per-view / PLE in December other than Deadline for NXT coming up the same day as Ring of Honor's pay-per-view Final Battle, which is interesting. We'll see what happens. In other news this week, though, Pat, interesting, reflecting again, because it's the 25th anniversary, Bret Hart appeared on the Ringer podcast a couple weeks back. And it's interesting, here's some comments here. He did say right from the get-go he wishes he never left WWE for WCW back in 97. Here's some highlights from the interview. Bret went on to say, quote, he's proud that he stood up for himself at the time, but that he regrets that bad blood that kept him and Shawn Michaels at odds for years is something he really, really regrets, as well as with Goldberg. Obviously, wrestling fans know the story. Nice, write-up this week by Z Manuel at Wrestling Inc. With just a few weeks left on his WWF contract at the time, Bret Hart walked into Survivor Series in Montreal to defend the WWF title against his bitter rival, Shawn Michaels, in one of the most infamous, if not the most infamous, double cross in pro wrestling history. Bret Hart was screwed out of the title, the subject of a real-life conspiracy led by, well, I'm just giving you highlights of what the interview, of a real-life conspiracy led by WWF owner at the time, Vince McMahon. What happened next was the stuff of wrestling lore. A backstage confrontation between Hart and McMahon allegedly left the chairman with a black eye. Bret Hart went to rival promotion WCW, where his storied career was cut short, according to an errant kick by Bill Goldberg, which you talked about during the podcast. And more than a decade of bitter feelings and resentment culminate in a reunion and reconciliation between Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels on the very first edition of Monday Night Raw in January of 2010. Bret Hart told the Ringer podcast this week that he regrets that things became so personal between him and Shawn, a.k.a. Michael Hickenbottom, someone he had once considered a close friend. Still, he said he wouldn't change the way he handled the moments after Survivor Series, including the punch he threw at Vince McMahon. Quote, "It was probably the greatest thing I ever did in the satisfaction I had because so many people probably wanted to do that to Vince, and I got to do that for them, in the sense that I stood up for myself like no other wrestler ever stood up for themselves against a greedy promoter." Obviously, and some other things as well. He went up on how he was misused in WCW. Certainly, due to a non-compete clause in the WWF contract, he was only able to appear in a non-wrestling capacity for the first 2 months in WCW, as we all know, until January of 1998. He appeared at Sold Out for WCW. Certainly, much of Hart's tenure in WCW was mired by questionable creative decisions by Eric Bischoff, including an extended period competing in the mid-card and for a mid-card title and an early heel turn and an allegiance with the NWO. Certainly, he went on to suffer an injury at the hands of Bill Goldberg, and certainly a stroke in 2002 meant that Hart's in-ring career on a regular basis was effectively over. Bill Goldberg has expressed remorse for the kick on numerous occasions, and Hart seemed to have accepted his apology in the past, but he seems to be continually dragging up Goldberg's in-ring abilities and clumsiness in recent interviews, as he did this week on The Ringer. For his part, Bill Goldberg said he's done apologizing. Quote, "If you can't accept my apology, it is what it is." In an August 22 edition of Talk is Jericho, when he talked about the incident with Chris Jericho. Pat, a lot to unpackage there as we, again, 25 years after what happened in Montreal.
Yeah, you said it, man. I mean, there definitely is a lot to unpack there. So, first and foremost, I just want to say that I love Bret Hart, the wrestler. Bret the Hitman Hart is one of the greatest to ever do it. A phenomenal in-ring wrestler, great psychology, connected with an audience, not being the most charismatic guy in the world, not being the best talker in the world, coming up in the time that he did, coming up from Calgary, working in his father's territory, and really just being able to thrive when Vince picked him up, whether through the Hart Foundation or on his own. Bret is certainly an all-time great and a very, very influential wrestler. With that being said, I really just, I'm so tired of hearing him complain about stuff. I really, really am. And I understand it. He feels a certain way about things. I understand the Goldberg thing, but, to Goldberg's point, like, he said what he said. It is what it is. No amount of, lamenting about this, crying about it, and continuously just bringing it up at every media appearance is going to change that. It's just not going to do anything, And I think that, to some extent, Bret has to kind of figure out a better, less public way to deal with it. Everybody's got their opinions on Goldberg. You know what I'm saying? Was he the best in-ring performer? No. Was he the worst? No. You know what I'm saying? He was what he needed to be. I don't blame Goldberg as much as I blame people like Eric Bischoff, as much as I blame people who did not take the time to, basically have him, go through the paces, and become a little bit more of a refined product before he got in there. But, WCW was in a position where they felt like they needed to do something to compete with Steve Austin. And they created their own Steve Austin and Bill Goldberg, obviously not as skilled in ring as Steve was. And, you know, he did what he did, and he was successful. He was successful, let's face it. A lot of other people who were not as good as Bret Hart was in the ring had matches with Goldberg, and they didn't get hurt, you know what I mean? And these things didn't happen to them. But, you know, it is what it is. I can see Bret, you know, being a ring general, wanting to take a guy like Goldberg and say, hey, you know what, I want to elevate you, and I want you to have a really good match with me, and I think that I'm capable of doing that. And, you know, accidents happening and Bret getting unfortunately hurt. But, I mean, you know, to Goldberg's point, like, he's apologized already. There's nothing else that he could do. What does he want, a blood sacrifice? You know, it's a bit ridiculous now. And getting to Montreal, you know, Montreal for me, obviously, you know, I have my own feelings on Montreal. You know, Bret should have done what he was asked to do. That's it. You know what I'm saying? You know, Vince didn't owe Bret anything. Nobody owed Bret anything. The business didn't owe Bret anything. Bret wouldn't have been discovered if it wasn't for Vince McMahon. Guys asking you to do is to just, you know, go out on your back, man. Put the other guy over. Put this other top heel over and make him, you know, the guy that can lead WWE, you know, forward to get to Steve Austin. You know, Vince just wanted him to lose, dude. And for people who say, oh, well, that would have been a problem and this and that, and, you know, you want to take that angle, Ric Flair lost the world title more than anybody else, and motherfucker's still a fucking all-time great and a legend. He's still Ric Flair, and he's still one of the most respected guys. I don't think anybody looks at him any differently because he lost the belt 16 times. You know what I'm saying? So that, you know, that to me, that's a bit of a tired excuse if we're being honest. You know what I'm saying? So for me, I just think Bret should have done his job. I think Bret should have done what Vince asked him to do. And for all the people that want to say, well, Shawn, you know, he wouldn't do it. You know, Shawn told him to his face that, you know, he wouldn't lay down for him. Shawn would have laid down, and Shawn would have done what Vince asked him to do, because Shawn always did what Vince asked him to do. Okay, as far as bookings go and everything else, and I don't want to hear nothing about no Mark conspiracy theories, because the proof's in the motherfucking pudding, okay? And yeah, Shawn Michaels was a scumbag in the 90s. He hailed from Philadelphia instead of, you know, San Antonio, you know, and everybody knows that he was difficult to work with, but he was the best guy in the business. And regardless of how fucked up he was on drugs, people still wanted to be in the ring with him. And that was a testament to his professionalism and what he was able to do in that ring and how he was able to elevate people, okay? So Shawn, you know, he's admitted since then that he was a piece of shit. He found Jesus, you know, and he came back and he had, in my opinion, the greatest second half of a career ever. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, Shawn, to me, well, but let me just finish my point here. But Shawn to me looks a lot more gracious. Shawn to me looks a lot better than Bret does. Shawn looks not only better but not bitter. And I love Bret and I respect Bret. Dude's coming off super fucking bitter, super bitter. You know what I'm saying? You had a great career, dude. People are still fucking talking about you. You know, I'm sure he makes his merch money. You know, I'm sure he does all right. But, like, the fact that he still wants to continue to, like, you know, put this guy through the ringer when he's expressed remorse and he's done everything possible and everybody's expressed remorse, he just kind of comes off like a crybaby, in my opinion. You know?
No, listen. I'm with you, man. And I know you and I have dissected this, like, a lot in our private conversations. And I think what's interesting, and, again, for people that, you know, have different streaming services or different type of smart TVs, you know, if anyone's ever heard of the app Tubi, Tubi, it's in a lot of smart TVs. It's one of those free apps where there's tons of movies and documentaries on. I happened to this actually a couple of days ago, earlier this week, I rewatched Wrestling with Shadows because it's on there. And they actually have a lot of good wrestling documentaries, everything from Beyond the Mat to everything else. So for anyone at home, if you're looking to watch old documentaries or stuff about, you know, people like Jake the Snake, John Moxley, wrestlers from the 80s and 90s. There's a lot of good stuff on that free streaming service, Tubi, Tubi. And Pat, I rewatched Wrestling with Shadows this week. You know, I was like, okay, I was feeling a little nostalgic. I was grading papers. I'm like, oh, let me just have it out. Let me have it on in the background. because I've watched it a million times. And it's funny because I think for a lot of us fans, especially for a lot of us Brett fans, we watch it with some fondness. But, what we've said on previous episodes and what we've seen on Dark Side of the Ring and other testimonials, it just seems, man, like this was one long, really detailed, I think, work. And, again, maybe a lot of people won't say that openly, like on a lot of shows. It just, you rewatch that documentary, and I get it that, like, Brett during the summer of '96 was in that negotiating period where Bischoff really wanted him, and Vince was, not struggling, but Vince was like, well, okay, the NWO is on fire. I've lost Hall and Nash. Bischoff is signing these people. They're bringing in DiBiase, bringing in Sean Waltman. They're bringing in Vincent. I mean, there was a point where like Bischoff was just writing checks to anybody to come in. And I think during that summer, you could tell that Vince felt, hey, I can't lose Brett here. I can't. I got to try to keep him. And he did, he not lowballed him, but, I mean, he pretty much was like, well, I can't give you that number that you're looking for with Bischoff, but I can give you more years. And for anyone that's ever done contract negotiations, I'm not a CPA, nor am I an attorney, but if you read enough language, you know that, if you spread out the money over X amount of years, it looks more attractive. And I think that's what happened. And certainly as you see Brett returning in '96, going into '97. I mean, Pat, the notion that Brett wanted to do this documentary, and you see that this was going on since the beginning of '97, okay, where, to the best of our knowledge, Vince had not disclosed the financial struggles with Brett yet, where the WWF was not doing well. It was trailing in the ratings a lot against WCW. And mind you, summer of '97, not to say that the NWO act was wearing off, but it wasn't as hot as the summer before in '96. Some bad booking, Hogan, the whole thing with Sting. Yes, Vince was still trailing in the ratings, but that's where Vince felt he had to sort of, change gears here, be a little edgier. He had to do something to stand out against WCW, and it makes me think that entire calendar year, like, Brett had this documentary crew. It wasn't like they just started filming them in November. See, people are under this impression. Again, folks, you got to watch a documentary and be analytical a little bit. You got to look at the dates and look at the time. You could tell that they started filming stuff at the beginning of '97. Okay, you could tell that this was months and months and months and months before Montreal, and for whatever reason, this documentary crew was already there. So it's like, okay, were we having like a preconceived destiny here about what was going to go on later in the year? This is always a conspiracy. I think that someone like me is going to look at and say, hey, this has to be a work, because going into the year from Survivor Series '96, which I happened to be there, great Survivor Series, by the way, at the Garden, into January of '97, nobody knew this stuff. At least it wasn't being reported. Vince wasn't making it known to Brett that, financially I'm having trouble here. That came up later in the summer, mysteriously. I'm not doing well financially. I got to cut ties with you. Okay, great. If you watch a documentary, the entire beginning of the year, nobody knew anything. And they're filming it like, okay, we're just filming a documentary. Along the way somewhere, somebody had to know something, Pat. Somebody had to know something, and, sooner or later, they might take it to their graves. And of course, they will take it to their graves. It just seems like when you watch Wrestling with Shadows, you watch even the pay-per-view before during the summer, the Canadian Stampede in Calgary. It just seems like Brett and Vince had this methodical setup of how the rest of the events were going to happen for the rest of the year. Okay, that pay-per-view was in July. Okay, we still had months and months and months before. It was a month before Brett won the title from The Undertaker at SummerSlam at the old Brendan Byrne Arena. It was still months in advance. It just seemed like this was premeditated for months, and it culminated with what happened in Montreal. But even then, like the camera work, like the idea of getting certain facials, certain angles. I mean, again, it's hard to dispute that this isn't a work. This was not some organic, spontaneous event that just combusted on worldwide television. I just think that when you rewatch the documentary, you can tell completely that it's a work, but it still gets talked about a quarter of a century later.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, my passionate rant aside, and again, that was my response to it being, you know, not a work. You know what I'm saying? It being a shoot. But for me, you know, I look at it and I just think to myself, not what a wonderful world, but what a wonderful work. You know, it really is something that just it's very funny, man. It's just something very fishy about it. And you know, by the way, it's very hard for me to believe you're into conspiracy theories. But you know, I don't know, man. If it is a work, it's the greatest work ever. And to your point, you know, you had Triple H, Vince McMahon, Shawn Michaels, Bret Hart, 4 of the greatest minds ever in the history of the business. You're telling me that those guys wouldn't be able to come up with something this intricate, this detailed, this innovative? Like, come on, man. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know that these guys are capable of coming up with something like this. So it's very much believable that this thing is a work. And you know, I can totally see that. I can totally see that, like 1,000%. You know, and I urge everybody at home, if you haven't watched Wrestling with Shadows, which I got by this point in time, any Bret fan, any wrestling fan has watched the documentary. I seriously, I don't know one pro wrestling fan that hasn't watched it in some way, shape, or form, whether they have the original DVD or they bought the supplemental DVD with the bonus footage, or they've watched it on YouTube, whatever. I urge you, rewatch it again and just pay attention to the dates. Pay attention to the timeline of how this was filmed. And you're going to see that this wasn't just something that they thought of. And again, who knows? For all we know, when Bret negotiated with Vince in the summer of '96, maybe this was part of the contract. Hey, by the way, you know, I want to be able to film a documentary about my life and career. Let's work that into this deal. Again, folks, remember, Vince has always been a good businessman. And while Vince doesn't have a law degree, Vince knows a lot about business and contracts and the way that you work. Now, again, at the end of the day, lawyers got to talk to lawyers. You got to define print, money, conditions, terms, outliers, all that stuff exists, okay? And at some point, that was negotiated. It wasn't like Bret just showed up at Titan Tower in Stanford. Hey, Vince, by the way, I'm going to have a documentary crew starting this summer. No, that is stuff, folks, that is organized and is coordinated months in advance. And the reason I say this, as someone who's an event planner, be it at a small scale, the point is that when you're planning things like anything, you have to do it months and months in advance. It's spontaneous. So, again, when you watch that documentary, you're going to see that this is months and months, even before he won the title, even before the conundrum and the clusterfuck of, oh, he's the champion, now he's going to be leaving in a couple of months, how do we get him to surrender the title? This is months and months before that became a problem, Pat. And I think a lot of fans lose sight of it. Again, maybe because I'm very analytical and I look for those things. But again, these are things that fans don't keep an eye out for. Never mind the fact, again, we can dissect what happened, because I'm still going to believe that at some point maybe both sides should have tried harder to come up with some sort of amicable end and, you know, or closure to this, where Bret should have dropped the title before. And, you know, again, if you're Vince, you know, you mean to tell me that all of a sudden you mysteriously learn that you're struggling for money two months out of Survivor Series? You know, again, and I don't want to feed conspiracies, but it just seems like there's a lot of moving parts here that we're never going to get answers to. And I think that's what frustrates a lot of fans, Pat.
Yeah, absolutely. And I get that, you know, and that's all fine and dandy and stuff like that. But, you know, for me, all these guys are still getting paid off of it. Anytime the anniversary comes up, anytime anything pertaining to it comes up, it's always talked about. It's one of the most infamous, if not the most infamous moment, you know, in the history of the business. And all these guys, they're still doing well. They're still remembered. You know, I'm sure Bret's doing pretty good. at those autograph signings, signing all these pictures. But, if anything, this is a testament to how negligent, how, absent-minded, and just how much of an idiot and an egotistical jerk Eric Bischoff was at the time. That he couldn't take a guy like Bret Hart, who at that point was the biggest babyface in the business, and bring him in a better way and utilize him to the best of his abilities in WCW. That to me is the biggest travesty of it all. You know what I'm saying? The fact that Bret went to WCW and just did not become what he should have been, or even came close to what he was in WWE. You know what I mean? So that's the biggest thing that I think we could look at. And not that many memorable matches outside of his match with Benoit, his match with Sting. Obviously, anytime he wrestled Kurt Hennig, it was great. But just a couple of moments, scattered moments, when Goldberg speared him and he had the chest plate on, that was really cool. But I mean, it wasn't as memorable as his run in WWE. It kind of fell short, and I think Bischoff didn't really look at Bret the same way Vince did. Didn't use him the way Vince did. Yep, and was kind of a waste, really, in the long run. Was really kind of a waste. But the screw job is always going to be talked about. And it's definitely one of the most infamous moments of all time,
No, I'm with you. And just to close out this segment about Bret's interview this week, and we've talked about it off the air as well. I think that what doesn't get discussed enough, I think, is the fact that leading up to what happened in Montreal and Bret's resistance to dropping the title to Shawn because of allegedly there was some bad blood. Whether or not they were working the boys in the back or the dirt sheets, we're never going to know. We're never going to know the answer. We know one thing I can bet money on, again, as an avid gambler, is that everyone's going to take this to their graves, and no one's ever really going to know the story. It just seemed that, Bret – listen, I fault Bret and his attorneys for not being a little more, I guess, vigilant when it came to negotiating a new contract or the reasonable creative control, because as you said to me in private conversations, that was going to put Vince behind the eight ball, because if Vince acquiesced to Bret during that time, during his remaining days in WWF at the time, then Vince would have had to do that to everybody else in the business, in the company, and it would have put Vince in a really tough position. If he acquiesced to Bret, again, the reasonable creative control that they agreed upon in the contract, which again, it's funny to me where when I want to feed the conspiracy either, but if you're signing a 10-year deal, which is what was reported, right? It was he was going to wrestle for X amount of years, then transition into the office, and then transition into being either an agent or a coach or something, Patrick. Okay, who in their right mind thinks about, my last 30 days as a performer, I want reasonable creative control? It almost seems like you're going into this. It's almost, I hate to say this because I'm a fan of prenuptial agreements, but it almost seems like, I think at some point things might dissolve or it might, fall apart. You know what? Let me just cover my tracks here and make sure that when I'm leaving, who thinks of that? Because if you've got the 10-year contract from Vince, or whatever it was, 20-year, whatever, you're not thinking about, my last 30 days as a performer, right? Because if you're going to transition into being office and being a coach or being an agent or producer, are you really thinking about your last 30 days as a performer and that you want creative control? It just seems like there's a lot of moving parts here that people will never, ever admit to. But it seems like this was destined for disaster.
Yeah, absolutely. No matter what, it was going to end up shitty. And you raise a lot of interesting points, not to feed into the conspiracy theories, but there's just a lot of things that don't really particularly add up. But obviously, Bret's healthy, Shawn's healthy, Vince had to step down. Vince, I'm sure, is enjoying retirement. But all three of those men are going to be forever linked because of that evening in Montreal. And, I'm glad that we were able to all experience it live. And again, just one of the most infamous moments in the history of the business.
Absolutely. So, again, not surprised that on the 25th anniversary, Brett would appear on a podcast and talk about it. And listen, some people look at him as salty. Some people are going to look at him as, hey, he's a hero. Hey, it depends what side of the fence you're on, folks. Everyone's going to have an opinion about Bret the Hitman Hart. Switching to AEW here, man. Backstage news apparently indicating all signs point, again, according to what happened on this past Wednesday's Dynamite, a very low rating Dynamite, which we'll get to in a little bit. It seems that this is William Regal's final appearance with the company, as he is reportedly bound to go back to the WWE. While that remains to be confirmed, it seems like Tony Khan got the most out of the Englishman in the final moments. If that was the case, obviously William Regal turned on his fellow Blackpool Combat Club member John Moxley at working overtime, or whatever it's called, at the Prudential Center that last month, to help MJF become the AEW World Champion, only for MJF to stab him in the back this Wednesday night by punching him in the back of the head with Regal's brass knuckles. It saw Regal being stretchered out, which drew emotions from the fans, got heat on the new champion. According to Wrestling Inc. and PW Insider, there were different ideas being debated about what to do with William Regal. While all ideas ultimately ended with MJF holding the championship, it seemed that there was one favored by several key people within the company. It seemed like some favored Regal to turn with MJF on Moxley and then to be turned back on, which is what happened, seemingly setting up a feud between MJF and Bryan Danielson on William Regal's way out. It seems like that's going to be MJF's next opponent, as Bryan Danielson will once again be challenging for the AEW World Championship. However, other ideas don't seem to feature Regal as heavily, according to inside sources. It would seem like the end result will be that Bryan Danielson will be the next contender coming up for MJF. And also, as William Regal was stretchered out in an ambulance, it seems that his contract is coming up to its conclusion. And what a lot of people were thinking would happen eventually, with Paul Levesque now in charge as the chief creative officer, William Regal heading back to NXT or working with Paul behind the scenes, I think is where he belongs. And let's be honest, when he worked in NXT, he helped develop a lot of great talent, work with Paul and Shawn and everybody else in that hierarchy. I think Tony Khan got the most out of this contract in a calendar year for William Regal, and what a way to write him off this week.
Well, I'm going to disagree with you there. I don't think Tony Khan got shit out of him. I think Tony Khan wasted him. I think Tony Khan could have done a lot more. But, Tony Khan doesn't really know what the hell he's doing. So that's a whole other conversation for another time. To borrow the name of one of TNA pay-per-view, Regal's bound for glory. He's going back to the WWE. He's going back to a backstage role, and he's going back to be Triple H's right-hand man. So I'm happy for him. I think it's great. I don't think they did enough with him. I think it was kind of a wasted run, in my opinion. And I just think that, it's a testament, if anything, to how disorganized and how chaotic AEW is backstage, that a guy like Regal, who's free and clear to do whatever the heck he wants, who was a good servant for WWE when he was there, the fact that he's willing to go running back to WWE and not re-sign a deal there for probably a pretty good amount of money, because I'm sure Tony Khan would pay him way more than what he's worth. The fact that he's turning that down and the prospect of that down to go back to WWE really, really says a lot about the state of AEW. But good for Regal. I think it's going to be great. He's going to get a nice pop when the fans see him again. I'm sure he's going to get a great pop backstage from the boys and girls. And, for Triple H, it's got to be awesome to have somebody that you trust that much, back in the fold. So for me, this is a win all around. But, again, another testament to AEW not maximizing what they have and leaving stuff on the table, in my opinion.
I'm with you, man. And again, grading is part of what I do for a living. I got to tell you, man, when you look at this contract and this run as an on-air personality for William Regal, again, I have to give this an F on Tony Khan. I think Tony Khan dropped the ball with this guy, as well as, he's dropped the ball with a lot of people, in my opinion, as we've talked about on the show this year. But I have to say that I have to grade this as an F. Other than selling Blackpool Combat Club merch and being that presence on commentary when the BCC were wrestling, again, Tony Khan had an oil rig there. I mean, I think he struck oil when he first got him, and he wasted him. And again, you said it perfectly. It's a testament to how inept Tony Khan is as an executive and as someone that you pretty much thrown a softball down the middle of the plate with getting someone like Regal, whose expertise in the business, whose professional wrestling IQ, who creatively can be a guy that can work with you with younger talent, production, character development. And it just seemed like, okay, I get it. He helped push people like Wheeler Yuta into the BCC and more of a mainstream. But what did that do? Is the BCC this overwhelming faction that is selling out merch? No, they're not. And I love Jon Moxley. Again, nothing against Bryan Danielson and Jon Moxley and Claudio Castagnoli and Willie Yuta, but was the BCC over as the elite faction in AEW? No. And I just think it's not a bad reflection on William Regal. It just seems like it was another opportunity wasted by Tony Khan.
Absolutely, and you know what? I'm gonna give you some credit for putting over Wheeler Yuta, even though he really doesn't deserve it because he's not over. And by the way, have you noticed? Do you know who Superhuman is? Do you know who Superhuman is? Are you familiar with it?
No, I'm not familiar now.
Okay, so I'm sure you've seen the videos out there, people. Superhuman is this juggalo who's a fan of ICP, who records these videos online where he says something. I believe he says, sending a shout out to all the juggalos and juggalettes, whoop whoop, and then he says, fuck this shit, and then he'll dive onto like barbed wire on a board or a keyboard,
I know. Okay. Yep.
you know who I'm talking about. He went viral.
Yep.
Yeah, he went viral.
I just couldn't recall the name, but absolutely, you nailed it.
Yeah, so Superhuman, that guy, that's what Wheeler Yuta looks like. He just looks like a taller version of him. Take a look at the pictures, folks. You'll see what I mean. But Wheeler Yuta's a guy that it's like, okay, great, they put him in a clique, but the dude has no charisma. He might be a decent worker, but folks, wrestling ain't gonna cut it. You need a character. You need to be bigger. And as for the Black Combat Pool Club, or whatever they call it, it had so much potential to be something bigger, but by putting that Yuta dude in there, it was silly. It kind of diminished it for me. I think a dude like Miro would have been better, or somebody like that, and they could have made him a bunch of WWE guys that, want to beat the shit out of all these AEW guys and I don't know, bite off an old angle, but at least make it a little bit more interesting than any of the stuff that they've done in there, But yeah, dude, I mean, they could have done so much with Regal. They could have put him backstage and paid him to do that. They could have had him come out, hand brass knucks and stuff like that to these guys, help them cheat, use the character stuff to get them. But instead, it's like, we're the Blackpool Combat Club. We're about wrestling. Bro, come on, man. And no offense to the guys involved, none whatsoever. I have immense respect for Claudio Castagnoli. I have immense respect for Jon Moxley. I have immense respect for my favorite wrestler, the American Dragon, Bryan Danielson. But, it just didn't work, man, and it fell really, really flat. And again, you got to blame these things on Tony Khan. You got to hold him accountable here, people. Everybody's so quick to critique anything that doesn't go the right way in WWE, but they won't look at Tony Khan, and they won't see that he's been doing things the wrong way from day one. He's had his little moments in the sun, and I give him credit for being able to promote a wrestling company and help people get paid, help people get recognized. But this guy's not doing it to the best of his ability. He's a dude who came in just because he had money. He didn't pay any dues. He didn't learn, under anybody. And he just came in thinking that he could do what people have dedicated their entire lives to doing. And I'm sorry, but that's not the case, you know? So, again,
Nope.
more potential thrown out the window, more money possibly left on the table. It is what it is. Same old AEW.
And let's be honest, for the duration of Regal's time as an on-air personality or the manager of forming the Blackpool Combat Club, what was the majority of this year? It was the BCC feuding with Chris Jericho and his new faction since the spring. Let's be honest. That went into Blood and Guts in the summer, the Anarchy in the Arena match during Double or Nothing. I mean, it was just not good television, and it's a shame because
Which Danielson got hurt in, by the way.
Exactly, and Tony Khan had a chance to utilize someone like William Regal for just backstage assistance, production, creative, character development. But again, once again, drop of the ball seems to be the modus operandi for Tony Khan. Speaking of dropping the ball in AEW, another update, ma'am, this week by Sean Newman in Wrestling Inc. It seems that while clarity on CM Punk's contractual status is still hazy, a new report this week suggests that at least one side is ready to move on from the relationship. According to PW Insider and also on the Pro Wrestling Torch with Wade Keller, it seems like CM Punk, while he's still under contract with AEW and is getting paid, apparently it's being reported that Phil Brooks is, quote, ready and willing to move on to his next project. AEW has not made a move on releasing him yet, but he's been off television since his participation in an alleged backstage brawl in early September in Chicago following the company's marquee all-out pay-per-view. The reported fight, we've all known, and it's been dissected to death, saw Punk and Ace Steel, his childhood friend, get into an altercation in the locker room with Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks, certainly after Punk called them out in an expletive-filled tirade during the All Elite Wrestling All-Out media scrum. Now, subsequently, Punk was stripped of the world title following the incident, while Omega and the Young Bucks were stripped of their AEW World Trios titles. All five men were indefinitely taken off television. Steel was subsequently released last month. However, Punk's status, though, remains in limbo while the Young Bucks and Omega have been back on television. Obviously they're in this best-of-7 series against the Death Triangle. But many within the pro wrestling community are saying, even though, let's say, some people have come out publicly in support of Punk's character, being a positive person in the locker room, many in AEW have criticized the former WWE and AEW champion for his role in the incident. Some have gone as far as to question whether Punk would ever wrestle again, and even some have questioned whether or not a company like WWE is willing to hire CM Punk ever again. Pat, a lot to unpackage there. Number one, we know there's money to be made, and Paul Levesque, like Vince McMahon, if there's money to be made, you can sit down as grown adults, put feelings aside, talk it out, and come to an agreement and make money. That's something Tony Khan could learn from, because if anything, you could take this angle, sit down Kenny Omega, Matt and Nick Jackson, Phil Brooks, and say, okay, you're four grown men, I'm the boss here. How can we turn this around and make money? We're not going to be the first people to say that. Jim Cornette's talked about it on his podcast. Conan and Disco Inferno have talked about it on their podcast. Eric Bischoff has talked about it on the podcast. Conrad Thompson as well. Seems like there's a consensus out there that Tony Khan did not act like the boss of a pro wrestling company, sitting down adults and saying, let's iron our differences, let's make money. Let's stop being bitches, and let's make money. It seems like Tony Khan is happier letting people be bitches in the locker room and not get rich. That's how I look at it, man.
Well, look, dude, the problem is it all goes back to it's like a good home, right? What's the most important thing in a good home? The foundation, right? That's really what matters. You got to check the foundation. And the foundation that Tony Khan has laid in AEW, it's not stable, it's not sturdy, and it's not what a wrestling company should have. And wrestlers, I can tell you firsthand, they're like sharks, man. They're predators, man. As soon as they smell a little blood, a little weakness, a little something, they try and exploit it. And when you have a bunch of dudes who are coming in, and a good chunk of them have not been in WWE, have not been in Japan, over a long period of time, are not really taught to be professional, are professional, and have grown up thinking that the business owes them something because they're over. These people have kind of created an environment because they were allowed to that goes against what a guy like Punk was taught and what a guy like Punk appreciates about the business. And I think Punk was vocal about things that had become commonplace there that should have never been commonplace. You know what I'm saying? You shouldn't have a game room in your backstage area. You do not need a game room. You're not there to play games. You are there to wrestle. You're there to learn a craft. You're there to get great at that craft and figure out ways to make money. You know what I mean? You're there to do all this stuff. Your focus should be on that, improving your physique, and just keeping your eyes and ears open and your mouth shut. And listen to vets and take advice and do all this stuff, because that's the only way you're ever going to get better. That's the only way. A lot of people that we have talked about on this program, whether it be Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, The Undertaker, Triple H, any of these people, they all got better because they shut the fuck up and they listened. And they understood the weight of the job that they were doing. And look, to a lot of people out there, a lot of common folk, wrestling is just this bullshit, hokey, entertainment, soap opera. It's all predetermined. It's all fake. It's a craft. It's an art. It really is. It really is. You're not just learning how to, do these falls, how to perform technical aspects of what you're doing. You are learning how to control people's emotions. You are learning to work a crowd. You're learning to get stuff out of them. You know what I mean? And figure out how this will add to what the story that you were trying to tell in that ring. And instead of these guys doing that, they'd rather play fucking video games, And not only that, but now they're going and they're having parties after every show, and they're going and they're having a big party, and everybody's getting fucked up on something. They're all taking pills, or they're probably smoking weed, or they're doing whatever. And not that there's anything wrong with that for the responsible adults, I'd like to say, but if you're trying to create a professional atmosphere and you want to compete with WWE, you shouldn't be doing that stuff. You're saying, hey, guys, it's okay to party and fuck off and play video games. And, yeah, don't forget to go out there and wrestle. I mean, and you're expecting that to work with a bunch of guys that are inexperienced. And you have the old guys there, but they don't give a fuck. They're getting paid. They're getting paid. So they're not going to help people. And let me tell you something. Wrestlers, anybody that's been in the business, okay, they get paid for what they do. Not what you want them to do, not what you think they're going to do. They get paid for what you want them to do, like pretty much anybody in the real world. So if you want a wrestler to be a mentor, if you want a wrestler to do certain things, you're going to have to pay him to do that, because otherwise they're just going to do what they got paid to do. So this thing where people are like, Jake Roberts is walking around handing out advice, and I'm sure he does to people that he likes and people he's developed relationships with, I'm sure. But for the most part, he's not back there coaching people. He's not watching matches and telling people what to do. No, because he's not getting paid to do that. So this is something that I think people kind of need to understand. And again, when Tony Khan, the Young Bucks, Kenny Omega, Chris Jericho, when they're all running this and they're all telling Tony Khan what to do and they're all okaying this, and now it comes time for Tony Khan to have to be a promoter and have to be a boss, he's not going to be able to do that because these people don't fucking respect him. It's the complete total opposite of Vince McMahon. So, look, I know there's going to be some people that are going to be in their feelings about this. They're going to be upset. They're going to be hurt. They're going to be so, Patrick hates AEW. He hates it. He's a hater. He likes every booking that Vince McMahon ever had. Oh, he doesn't understand. He doesn't know booking. He doesn't know this. He doesn't know that. I know a lot more than most of y'all, okay? Y'all are fucking fans. I sat under learning trees of people that have done things in this business, and the business is the same. And just because you like something doesn't mean that you have done it and you can opine on it, like you're a professional with technical aspect. You could just say you don't like the match. That's it. But to critique a wrestler, for what they're doing, when you don't know shit about it, when you don't know how it fucking works, It's a problem, and that's a big problem with wrestling fans nowadays. And
Well,
it's been created by people like Dave Meltzer, you know? And I'm sorry I got so passionate. You know, I'm normally not that. But you know.
I'm glad you did, because I think you hit the nail on a lot of things there, man, that are valid. I think that, again, listen, as fans, we know what we like. We're going to opine. It goes back to this premise, and we've talked about it off the air, you and I, where social media has emboldened pro wrestling fans for years now, okay? You know, we referenced, and not to beat this to death, but we referenced what happened in Montreal 25 years ago. I think what people forget, and again, and I'm older than you, Pat, but I remember this vividly, you know, in 1997, you know, the night of Montreal and the day after, yeah, guess what? Like a lot of us, we were looking or reading ProWrestling.com. And I know we laugh at that now, but that's all we had at our disposal. Okay, yeah, we had AOL, we had chat rooms, we had instant messenger, whatever, and that's how people communicated, and this is how people would vent online, but that's it. That's all we had. That's all there was. There was no YouTube yet. Facebook was not even a thought in Mark Zuckerberg's mind when he was in high school or whatever the hell he was, because he didn't get to college, I think, until 2004 at Harvard. The point is that, you know, social media changed our outlook on a lot of things: pro wrestling, sports, pop culture. Why do fans get to bitch and moan about the Marvel Cinematic Universe and how they may not like certain films, or, you know, the idea of athletes and what they should be doing or not doing, or saying or not saying? Social media changed this completely. All right, when Facebook first started in 2004 as the Facebook, it was the idea of just, you know, this is college kids using it to like network and meet other college students. And then we've seen what Facebook has exploded into. Next year, 2005, YouTube was created. We know what YouTube has done. Same thing with Twitter in 2008 it started. And then Instagram in 2011. And then Snapchat. And now TikTok. Guess what? What do they all have in common? They've let regular people have a voice. And what has that done? It's emboldened, especially in pro wrestling, marks either A, host a podcast, do something on YouTube, rant and rave about what they don't like, and it's created the Meltzer was around in the 90s anyway, but I mean, it's emboldened the Meltzers, the Wade Kellers, who I still respect, by the way. I still have an infinite amount of respect for Wade Keller, because I used to read the Pro Wrestling Torch, still a very respectable publication, I think. But the point is that, like, social media has now emboldened every single person who's a pro wrestling fan to say, you know what, I don't like A, B, and C. I don't like that Paul did this on Raw. I don't like that Stephanie and Nick Khan are, you know, I don't know, now apparently, you know, looking to do shows in India now, as opposed to, like, you know, the ongoing shows that they do in Saudi Arabia, and whatever. We can opine on business practices, booking. And I just think that you can't put the genie back in the bottle, unfortunately. But this is what social media has created when it comes to this, and it's what makes wrestling so tribal. It was tribal back in the 90s during WCW and WWF, but it was a different tribalism where it was just you're watching it and that's it. There was no ongoing competition online. You either watched it, you talked about it with your friends. Oh, I didn't watch Nitro. I watched Raw. Oh, I watched Raw. I didn't watch Nitro. Whatever. The tribalism now is completely different than anything we ever grew up with, bro.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, look, dude, it's how rich of us, right? How rich of us with a wrestling podcast talking about how people are emboldened to give opinions, right, and criticizing it. But I think I think what we do on this show is different. You know what I'm saying? Because granted, look, I'm not on here saying that I'm Ric Flair, that I'm Harley Race, that I'm Shawn Michaels, that I'm Eddie Guerrero, that I'm Bret the Hitman Hart, that I'm Stone Cold Steve Austin, John Cena, The Rock, anybody. I'm not saying any of that. All I'm saying is that I have been in the business and I understand how the business works on the smallest level to the biggest level, because it's the same thing. It is the same exact thing. Just more money. That's all. Just more money. And you know, seeing that, learning and understanding what it's about, you start to see how things work and how things don't work. And a lot of these people think that because they like something and their 5 friends you know, her hanging out in their basement, eating their boogers and, you know, collecting iguana droppings or something, you know, they think that, well, these guys like it, everybody I know likes it, you know, so this is popular and this is big. And the reality is that a lot of the stuff that they like is not stuff that's going to make a lot of money. It'll make some money, but it's not going to make WWE money. It's not going to make money that's going to be able to put AEW in bigger arenas and stuff. But anyways, I don't want to keep going here and stay sidetracked. We were talking about CM Punk, and CM Punk to me is a dude, like I said, who is very old school. He has a lot of respect for the business. I can tell you, like personally, when I met CM Punk, which was in 2002, about 20 years ago, you know, they called him the best in the Midwest. He was coming from IWA Hardcore over there. I believe it was Ian Rotten, if I'm not mistaken. But he came over with Colt Cabana, and, you know, there was an aura to him. There was something to him. And when he came in, the thing that really stuck out to me the most, because, you know, at that point, my cousin and I, we were, you know, 17-year-old kids. We had seen basically, you know, all different types of wrestlers and how they act. And some wrestlers, like people, can be assholes. You know, like regular people, they can be assholes too. But CM Punk was the dude that came in, shook out all the ring crew's hand, which we were a part of. The announcer, the timekeeper, basically the ring crew was really the thing he respected the most. And that's a very old school thing, and that's something that we're all taught, you know, to respect ring crew and help out and contribute in any way that you can for the show. You know, you're not above doing something at any point in time. And you got to, like, honor and respect the people that are help making this show possible. You know, these are the people who are put in the ring that you're going to wrestle in together, you know. But a lot of people disregard that, and they don't get that. And CM Punk was a dude who took the time to acknowledge that and took the time to give, you know, respect to people that, well, what the fuck can we do for him? Who the fuck are we in the grand scheme of things? But, you know, we were nobodies, but he respected the tradition and the honor. And CM Punk is very rooted in tradition, and he's rooted in honor and respect. And I think him seeing that, you know, Tony Khan was okaying a culture that after every Dynamite, these people go back to the hotel and they have a big party and everybody's, you know, drinking and doing drugs and stuff like that and getting all messed up and embarrassing themselves and potentially risking, you know, getting themselves involved in some kind of legal issue. You know, CM Punk recognizing this and trying to give Tony advice and say, hey, this is what, you know, you need to do here. You know, the basics. I think that really stuck with CM Punk, and the fact that, you know, Chris Jericho called him a cancer and Chris Jericho didn't like him. Chris Jericho likes to party, folks, in case you haven't noticed either. And Chris Jericho probably didn't react well to stuff like that. And Punk probably told him, hey, you're a vet, man. You should be saying stuff like this, you know? So that right there, that was a problem. And look, everybody knows CM Punk is straight edge. And I don't think that he's upset that people are drinking and doing drugs, like, while they're, you know, after they're done with work, if you will. But it's again, it's like you're trying to create a professional atmosphere there. If people want to go out and drink, they can go out and drink. You don't have to host a venue for them. You don't have to do any of that shit. You don't have to party with them. You're the fucking boss. You know, you're not supposed to do that. And, you know, the fact that he's breeding that kind of culture, and, you know, he's not making it professional where if somebody does want to go out after the show and go get a drink, they'll go do it. Or if somebody wants to, you know, smoke a joint to alleviate pain or pop an edible or take a pill or do whatever that they like to do, you know, they could go do that privately and they could do that responsibly and be adults, you know. And just little things like that, like creating that kind of an atmosphere, having a game room when these guys should be having a study room. They should have you know, a television there with videos and all this stuff that they should be watching. They should be recording their stuff. They should be working on their stuff like way more. They should have a live feed for what's going on outside to help each other grow, to help each other become better. Be receptive to advice from veterans, even if it's people that you might not have liked as a wrestler, but they've been around. Be open-minded to these ideas. And I think a lot of this is what was lacking in AEW, and a lot of this is the reason that we might potentially find Punk going back to WWE, because he craves that professionalism. And I know I have a banging band playing in the background while I'm talking about this, but, you know, I feel like it could have used this bass line. So I'm just going to say that I think ultimately Punk saw the other side of the grass, and it is greener, you know, because he stopped watering the side of the grass that he was on, you know. So I think Punk ultimately is going to end up back in WWE. They're going to bring him back in on a part-time level. He's going to go. He's going to make his money. He's going to collect good, part-time money. He'll probably be back by the summer, and he's going to main event WrestleMania in Philly. That's what I think is going to end up happening. But
and that'll be interesting. And that'll be interesting. But even before we get to that, I think we have to see what happens with him and this contract. I think, according to some reports, we're hearing that Tony Khan, him, are at odds about the non-compete clause. Obviously, he still has 3 years left on his deal, making crazy money. I don't think Tony Khan might just pay him just to sit out 3 years, which I think would do him a disservice, because I'm sure he'd like to get back in the ring without getting too much older, even though he's much more injury prone and he's much more, I don't want to say banged up, but he's just injury prone. It'll be interesting to see, what Punk's legal team and what Tony Khan's legal team is going to do, because at the end of the day, do you buy out, 80 cents on the dollar? What do you do here? Do you buy it out dollar for dollar? Something where both sides, clearly it doesn't seem reparable. It seems like there's irreconcilable differences on both sides. Hey, that's fine, Tony. You want to keep paying him, fine, but you're going to pay him for 3 years to sit at home? I don't know if Punk's going to do that. Maybe he will. Maybe Punk's just tired of wrestling. Maybe this has made him sour. I don't know, but it'll be interesting if he is able to get out of this deal, or at least, a buyout. Paul Levesque's going to jump on this, and I'm sure Paul can sit down and have a conversation and say, hey, listen, let's put our differences aside that have been highlighted in the past with my father-in-law too. Do you want to make money or do you want to be bitter? And you know what? When you pose that question to people, Patrick, if you're commonsensical, if you're not cognitively declining, chances are you ask someone that question, you want to make money or you want to be bitter? I think someone's going to want to make money. I think Phil Brooks is smart enough to go that route. So it's going to be interesting, I think, moving forward with what we hear about the contract status of CM Punk and AEW. Speaking of AEW, man, some ratings here. We always like to.
Hey, Fern, before you start, Fern, I'm sorry to cut you off, but before you segue into that next segment, I just want to ask something of our viewers and interview as well. Where are all those people online that are saying free CM Punk and are mad at Tony Khan the way they were mad at Vince McMahon when he didn't want to let people leave while they still had a contract with him? Because whether we like it or not, and whether we would like to see Punk in WWE or AEW or just wrestling in general, we have to understand that there's still a contract there. There's still an agreement that has to be honored. You know what I'm saying? And they have to figure out a legal way to do that. But, where's all those people out there? Where are they? Where are they? Because you remember them, right? I'm not just making this up. This isn't just, a good strain here. I remember these people.
Free Ali, free Ricochet. Take your pick. There are a lot of people that the fans wanted freed, right? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So where are they?
Absolutely.
Because I don't see it. And I'd really like to see it in our inbox or comment on the page or whatever you want to do. But please, I'd like to see you out there. Don't be disingenuous, folks. Don't. Take Tony Khan to task too,
Exactly. If you want to crucify Vince McMahon and Paul Levesque and Stephanie McMahon and Nicholas Khan, be consistent. Crucify Tony Khan because there's a lot to crucify. Speaking of Tony Khan, obviously look at the ratings recently. Really disappointing Dynamite this week, man. It had been 2 weeks since MJF had won the AEW World Championship at the Prudential Center here in nearby Newark, New Jersey. This past week, look at these numbers, 870,000. Listen, AEW fans are going to make every excuse in the world. Oh, the NBA is on, which there were some good games. The NHL is on. Well, here in New Jersey, guess what? Our Devils are in first place, and they're doing pretty well, so they're on TV. But, look, these numbers, man. November 30th, this past Wednesday, 870,000. The week before, I'll just read you November back in reverse chronological order. 870,000, 880,000, 818,000, 930,000, 911,000. That was November. Let's go back to October. 997,000. That's a million if you round up. Fine, a million. The week before, 752,000. Yikes. The week before that, 983,000. The first Dynamite of October, 1,038,000. Going back to September, 990,000. All right, we can round up, make that $1 million. That's fine. The week before that, 1,039,000. The week before that, 1,175,000. The Dynamite right after All Out, only 1,035,000. You think after all the hoopla and controversy, and then right before Labor Day, 1,020,000. Pat, I'll tell you, these numbers aren't inspiring. And you would think that, okay, you got what you wanted, took the belt off of Punk, you're pushing MJF to the moon. This past week, 870,000 viewers. I get it. You want to blame the NBA, NHL, or college basketball, college football, whatever. You want to blame what's going on, a Senate race in Georgia, runoff Senate race this Tuesday. I mean, I'm trying to think of everything on television, bro, that's possible, why people be distracted. This is not a good number here, man.
I think there's also SpongeBob SquarePants reruns as well. So that might be taken away from some of the number in the key demo, because SpongeBob is pulling in those key demos. I feel like we're a friggin' dog chasing its tail. You know what I'm saying? I feel like it's just like it's the same old song and dance with AEW. And, All Out, they had a chance to do something so cool. They had a chance to come back, to put everything aside, to get the business. And, the immaturity within the company was its undoing that day. You know what I'm saying? Because, now it's past the point of no return. Like, they can't go back to, like, working together, or the possibility of working together. They don't want to do it. It's never going to happen, right? Unless, something. I still don't rule out anything. I never really do. But I don't know, man. I mean, it's just, dude, like MJF, for example, who's a guy that I wasn't terribly huge on at the beginning, but he's proven how unique he is. He's proven how much he sticks out on that program. He's proven how much he offers to the product in general, and the fact that he, as champion now, one would think that the product is going to be better, that the product is going to be able to get to that million mark again, that the product's going to be able to be what it was, and maybe even better than it was with CM Punk, right? One would kind of start to think that, because anybody who has a brain in their head, they know that CM Punk, he's a star, but MJF has potential to be a star of equal strength. But my question is, what are they going to do with MJF that we haven't seen already? What interesting thing are they going to make happen? Because the most interesting thing that they did with him, they botched it and made it look phony. The whole leaving angle, all that stuff, and then just it unfolding the way like it did. They had a chance to be creative. They had a chance to push the envelope. They had a chance to really kind of maybe even give, a surprise shot to Vince McMahon. And every time that they have a chance to do this, they ruin it. They just absolutely ruin it. And it's nuts. It's nuts, but it's a testament to a lot of the politics, a lot of the nonsense that's going on there, and how it's leaked into important parts of the business that should be functioning, at maximum capabilities. So, I'm not surprised, but my question is, what are you going to do with MJF as champion now that you didn't do with him before, that is going to make the product that much better? And more importantly, are you going to botch the execution this time, or are you going to really knock it out of the park? Because, look, the possibility's still there. He's very talented. The money's there, but we need to see something different. We need to see something that's gonna bring fans back. You know what I'm saying? Because right now, if we're looking at it honestly, a lot of people have defected back to WWE. A lot of people have defected back to WWE. I mean, it's like freaking Moscow and the Hudson, okay? But Tony Khan has to get those people to come back. Tony Khan has to get those people to want to watch AEW over WWE, and he has to take his most interesting character right now and make him even more interesting than he was before. So he's got an uphill battle, man. And I just think that the fans for as much as they might like certain things, they're not interested. I mean, look at what happened. The best of 7 series trios match, the trios spot fest. And again, I have nothing but respect. But I have nothing. I just want to say that I have nothing but respect for those guys that are the Young Bucks. They're talented. I respect them. I respect people that put their lives on the line and wrestle, especially do with stuff like that. Kenny Omega, and what's his name, Pac, and the Lucha Brothers. Those guys, I give them respect. But I mean, like, it's the same thing over and over again. And they might come up with more creative finishes for all the matches, but it's a freaking spot fest. It's a no-sell spot fest, okay? And it's right. Between people that realistically have been proven that nobody knows. Their audience know Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks. Their audience know the Elite. Their audience, know the Death Triangle. The average everyday Joe doesn't. And they don't give a shit about them because they haven't done any good character work to get these people over. We all tend to forget. We get so caught up in the flips and the wrist locks and the, shooting star press, Canadian destroyer super kicks that, we forget what really brought us to wrestling to begin with. When we were little kids and we were watching wrestling, we were going, gee, this is such a technical masterpiece and I'm really enjoying the way the technology is coming together. You were like, no. It's fucking Hulk Hogan. He's coming down to fucking save the day. He's an American hero. He's an American hero. And here comes the Ultimate Warrior. Oh, my God, he's huffing and puffing. And what's he talking about? A spaceship and what, crashing it? And, Hulk Hogan? And what? Like, he's talking to his hands? What the fuck's going on? And, oh, yeah, you got the Macho Man. Oh, man, this guy's got a crazy voice, and he's exciting, and he jumps off the top rope. That's what connected us, these big characters, Roddy Piper, all these people, that's what brought us in. That's what wrestling's about. It's connecting with a character. It's not about how many fucking wrestling moves he knows. Because guess what? A lot of those people I mentioned didn't do all that many wrestling moves. And they were super over and huge. And by the way, they're still making gimmick money to this day.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying?
Well, yeah, absolutely. Yes, absolutely. I mean, there are immediate families. Certainly, those that are having to have access to those finances. Absolutely. You're right, bro. I mean, again, it's you need some character work. You just can't be about wrestling. I love wrestling, but you have to have. If you're not a character, if you're not displaying some personality, you're just going to go by the wayside.
Yeah.
And it shows with these ratings. Moving to Raw here, not a surprise here, man. I mean, again, it's the NFL season, and while a lot of the Monday night games have not been the most inspiring games per se, they're nothing like the Sunday night games on NBC. Or the America's Game of the Week on Fox or on CBS in the 4:25 time slot. I mean, shortly after Paul took over, right before SummerSlam, we're looking at August the 22nd here, and we're looking at 2 million. The following week, 2.1 million. Literally the Monday, I think, after Clash at the Castle, 2.094. Then it dropped, and again, this is something that any WWE fan would expect, NFL, Monday Night Football, as unbearable as Joe Buck can be to listen to, and Troy Aikman sometimes, Monday Night Football is an institution, just like Raw is, but the NFL is going to get its rating. Pretty much since September the 12th, we've seen 1.7, 1.5, 1.6, 1.6, 1.8, 1.8, 1.64, 1.5 even on Halloween. 1.5, 1.6, 1.6, 1.6. That's what we're expecting. Again, that's the number we're going to be seeing during the NFL season. It's not like, oh, my God, the bloom has fallen off the rose for Paul Levesque as a booker. No, it's not. It's a victim of the circumstance. There's the NFL is on. The NBA is on. The NHL is on. Folks, again, it's the primetime television slot. There are shows on Monday nights. Again, it's a healthy number. It's not the 2 million we were seeing during the summer, but it's still a healthy number. And let's be honest, again, I don't like to do false equivalences or the whataboutisms, but, almost 1.7 here on a Monday night when there's a lot of stuff to watch on TV. That's a good number for WWE. So the marks that when I say, oh, well, look what's going on, WWE's floundering. How's it floundering? AEW couldn't get to 1.60 if you totaled up their last 1, 2, 3, 5 shows. I mean, give me a break, folks. Let's keep it in perspective here.
Yeah, no, man, I agree with you. I just think the lack of awareness. By the way, I hope this sounds better. I changed my location because I had that band playing, and I'm sorry to the listeners for that, and to you as well, Professor. But it's crazy. Again, it's this mentality that's been cultivated, by Dave Meltzer and by all these marks online that feel emboldened because, this respected guy, and let's be honest, Dave Meltzer's a respected guy in the business, he's validating their shitty opinions about garbage indie wrestling that isn't going to really fucking draw. Let's be real. And look, I don't hate indie wrestling. I respect indie wrestling, okay? I used to go to some of the best indie wrestling back in the day, Jersey All Pro Wrestling. Shout out to my boy Angel Sarita, my boy James Anthony, and, Shawnee Masterson, Uncle Paulie, the whole crew, Mike Minervini, everybody, the Jersey All Pro crew, when we used to go to these amazing shows. And this show had a variety of things, just like the AEW does. They had death matches, they had women wrestling, they had intergender wrestling, they had tag team wrestling, they had amazing technical wrestling, they had foreign wrestling, they had a little bit of everything. But the biggest difference between that wrestling and this wrestling that we're seeing, this version of indie style wrestling, is all of those guys were fundamentally sound. All of those guys, all those gals, everybody that was on them shows, they could all throw a punch. They could all lock up. They could all chain wrestle. They could all do everything. They could work. Their fundamentals were solid, and they all had psychology. Obviously, you had, your spot guys here and there. That was inevitable. The guy that can't throw a punch or lock up, but he could do a shooting star press. That's the kind of stuff that it makes wrestling look fake and it turns people off. Because look, people know it's a work. People know it's a work. Everybody knows it. Right. It's just how you're presenting this work in the modern age. And I got to tell you, man, for as much as people want to criticize Vince and they want to criticize Paul and everybody over there, they know how to do it. They know how to do it in 2022. Yeah. People like Jim Cornette, who I respect immensely. I respect Jim Cornette immensely, okay? Jim Cornette understands the business and how it works and how you get it out there for back in the day. Not now. And that's not a knock to him. But Triple H and these people, they see these numbers. They have these strategies, and they work. They work. More times than not, they work. So, I don't even know, man. I don't even know. I don't even know what the fuck we were talking about before. I feel like we're going all over the place with this stuff, but this is all valid stuff that needs to be talked about as far as wrestling goes.
No, I agree. Again, as we're talking about the numbers here and the metrics and the ratings, again, WWE knows what it's been doing for 30-something years, especially on Raw and again, I hate to sort of put all this emphasis on all the eggs in one basket about the NFL, but again, it makes a difference. When the NFL season's over, you see the numbers really grow for Raw. And as much as people hated Raw sometimes the way Vince was booking, again, what Paul is doing now is there's a stark contrast. There's different talent on TV that wasn't on before. I think we're seeing that. With the SmackDown ratings, it's interesting. Again, they've been consistent, man. I'll just take you back again to the end of the summer when Paul took over. We're looking at 1.99, basically 2 million. Literally the day before Clash of the Castle. Yes, it was pre-recorded, but still people watched it because they wanted to see sort of the go-home show. 2.077 million. Going into the rest of September, 2.3. I'll keep going until last Friday's. 2.2, 2.5, 2.2 to round out September. October, we had 2.24, 2.25, 2.23. Literally the weekend, Halloween weekend, a little interesting. Again, the baseball playoffs, it wasn't on Fox. It was on FS1. It dipped dramatically to 835,000. But then again, right after the baseball playoffs, here are the numbers for November: 2.13, 2.26, 2.23, and last Friday, 2.16, the day after Thanksgiving on a live Black Friday edition of SmackDown. Healthy numbers, not a surprise there. It's on a marquee channel. Again, Paul knows what he's doing. It's a different presentation on SmackDown than Raw, different talent, different, characters. Obviously, the bloodline is as over as any other faction in history. in recent memory. They're selling merch, the metrics, everything's there, especially after Survivor Series. Listen, again, folks, everything is there, and we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. Obviously this weekend with the Smackdown after Survivor Series, I'm sure the number's going to be pretty high, Pat. Which brings us to Survivor Series, bro. Great pay-per-view last week. PLE, excuse me. I mean, it's still a pay-per-view for people that don't have Peacock and have to order it through their smart TV or their cable service, whatever. Interesting, great card. Let's just run it down a little bit here. Looking at certainly, let's sort of, go back to some of the matches here. Austin Theory in a triple threat match against Seth Rollins, the defending champion, and Bobby Lashley. A little bit of a swerve here. I really, really thought after the way Rollins retained during the cash-in that Rollins was going to retain once again. A little bit of a swerve here, putting the title back on Theory, a more serious Austin Theory. No more selfies, no more comedic Austin Theory, a much more serious Austin Theory, and a little bit of a bigger Austin Theory. So you can tell he's hitting the gym or whatever he's doing. Austin Theory winning the U.S. title. Pat, real quick, your thoughts on that match?
I liked the match a lot. I thought it was an interesting match. The finish I thought was really good. I liked the shakeup of putting it on Theory. The finish I thought was dope. It got a little detached at the end there, but it was still good enough to be able to get the point across. And, for me, I just thought all in all those guys put in a great shift. I mean, Theory, man, it's, the kid is just money, man. Like, he's money. He's the future of the business. I really genuinely think so. I think he's going to be a huge star. Everybody's talking about MJF, and MJF is great and stuff like that, but, Theory's a much bigger guy, and, Theory just has, like, John Cena, Hulk Hogan, top guy written all over. You know what I mean? So that and him being able to work with Seth Rollins, who's, in my opinion, the best wrestler on the planet right now, it's great. And Bobby Lashley, man, what can you say about him, that hasn't already been said? Like, what a talent, I mean, let's be real, like, his first go around, he wasn't the most spectacular. He didn't really have it together. And I just think the time in MMA, and the time, on the Indies, and in TNA, I think it really benefited him. And I think it got him to the point that, he's just such a great performer and such a dependable performer that it's, he's a guy you could throw in that matchup and it's going to work. And it did.
Absolutely,
and
absolutely.
I like the match. I like the booking. And I like the change in Theory's persona, by the way. Just wanted to throw that in there.
Yeah, I like it too. I think if you want to start pushing him as a main event star, not to say that the comedic routine wasn't getting over. It was. It was being an obnoxious heel. It worked. But I think this new persona, is going to pay off dividends for sure. The women's War Game match kicked off Survivor Series. Hell of a contest, certainly with Becky Lynch getting the win for Team Bianca. Not a surprise. Becky coming back from injury recently. You certainly didn't want to expose her too much in this match. Her coming in last for the baby faces, not a surprise there. Spots, certainly that leg drop by Becky from the top of the cage on top of the table to get the win. Listen, you got 10 great women here. For anybody that wants to say that, does the future look bright for the women's division? It certainly does. You got a saturation of great women on all three rosters. Even the young and up-and-coming ones in NXT, I think, are going to be good for the future. But these 10 women are doing well. Becky getting the win, again, catapulting her because we're seeing the tea leaves. We're seeing the writing on the wall. We're looking at Ronda and Becky for WrestleMania in April in Los Angeles in Hollywood. Good way to bring her back and get the win for Team Bianca, bro.
Yeah, man. I thought all in all it was good stuff. Obviously, you're not going to have the blood like you used to back in the day. You're not going to have any of that stuff. But the weapons and all the spots, I thought they were really, really excellent. And I basically enjoyed the match. And I thought that, it had everything that the match should have had, you know. And I thought that Becky returning was fantastic. I thought the leg drop, all the spots were great. You know, for as much as I like Bayley, and for as much as I like Io, and for as much as I like Dakota, and the idea of them as a group, it's just not been good. I have to be honest and admit that it's not been good. But they're both three dependable performers. And I think that they need to take that concept, need to take that idea and kind of somehow fix it up. You know, maybe have them turn on Bayley, you know, and have Bayley go back to her old shtick for a sec. You know, I mean, they can do a lot of different things, but I doubt she wants to do that. And if she does, she's probably going to wait for it. But for me, I look at it and I kind of, you know, Dakota, she's decent. She's not, you know, her kicks and her stuff, like, it's solid. She knows what she's doing. And she obviously has the trust of somebody like Triple H. So that really says a lot. But Io and Bayley, you know, they're the real talent in the group, but they're just kind of meh right now. Rhea, I love it. I love everything she's doing. She's just gorgeous and on top of her game. She's just amazing. And I really like how they're teasing her and Bianca. I think that would be a really great WrestleMania match, Bianca and Rhea, and Ronda and Becky. I mean, and you know, obviously at some point Charlotte's going to come back. You know, Sasha Banks could come back. So, you know, these are all kind of hypotheticals, and a lot of things could you know, go into place, you know, pretty soon. But
no, absolutely.
You know, all in all, I thought the match was great, and I enjoyed it, and I thought everybody did their part really well. And Bianca Belair, man, like, wow, what a talent! I mean, you know, you might not like the gimmick, you might not, you know, see what it is, but man, just what a talent! The way she can get in there, perform at such a high level, and just grasp wrestling so well. Just great stuff from all the women in the match, in my opinion.
Absolutely. A great match to kick off Survivor Series. Another great match during the night, AJ Styles going up against Finn Balor. Nice to see AJ get his first win on pay-per-view / a PLE in almost 3 years. He had not won a match on the stage since 2019, so it was interesting. Kind of predictable. You knew Rhea Ripley was not going to be at ringside due to participating in the War Games match, which pretty much left, you know, Anderson and Gallows to be in AJ's corner against Finn with Dominic Mysterio and Damian Priest in their corner. You know, I kind of foresaw at some point outside the ring, the guys were just going to brawl and leave Finn and AJ in the ring. Great match, great finish. Doesn't do any harm to Finn Balor's character. Taking a clean loss, you know, to AJ doesn't do anything to harm Finn. I think it helps to keep AJ relevant, which he is. Nice to see him back with Anderson and Gallows. Yeah, it's selling merch. It's sort of, you know, getting a little bit of a nostalgia thing. Great match. We'll see where it goes from here on in. I'm not sure if this feud continues, but I could watch AJ fight Finn Balor every single week, and I would not complain about those matches. Pat, real quick on this one.
I thought the match itself was really, really excellent. I enjoyed all of it. You know, I thought that it was honestly good booking in the sense that they killed off, you know, any potential for it to be stale, you know, and that's what I thought was really good about this. And that's what I thought it needed. And it was really, really missing that. It was really lacking that for quite some time. But, you know, I'm glad that they got this out of the way. AJ went over, right? In this one?
Yes. Yep. That's right. He did. First match. First win out of pay-per-view / PLE in 3 years.
Okay, cool. Because that's what I recall. You know, but I just had to like double check. So basically, you know, I thought the match was excellent. I thought that it was good because they basically took, you know, this feud and they took it, you know, they took it to a point where they killed it before it had an opportunity to get stale, because they had a lot of series of matches and stuff like that. And I thought that, you know, the payoff now I thought would be the best idea. And I thought it would be what should be done right about now. So, yeah, all in all, great matchup from two great pros.
No, absolutely. I think it was a match that, I could watch over and over again. And because of their experience working in Japan, their long history, who knows? It could prove for some good storylines down the line. The disappointment of the night, at least for me, and I think a lot of people I talked to off the air, Shotzi going up against Ronda Rousey for the SmackDown Women's title. I mean, this match, it is what it is. Again, it's about getting Ronda the heel now to WrestleMania in April against Becky Lynch. Again, not a great match. I'm just not a fan of Ronda 4 years later now. I get the purpose she serves, but it's just, not the best match of the night at all. You could hear the collective buzzkill in the building, but it is what it is. When it comes to this character that Ronda Rousey now is portraying, not a great match, dude. But again, it did what it was supposed to do.
For me, it seems like, and I like Ronda Rousey, and I respect Ronda Rousey a lot. I mean, she's a pioneer, man, for MMA. She really is, and what she was able to generate. I mean, people want to talk about Gina Carano, Cyborg. Ronda Rousey made more money than all of them, and for Ronda to do that and do that at the same time that guys like Brock Lesnar were fighting and, George St. Pierre and, all these legends, all these greats, big money draws were fighting. Conor McGregor, and Ronda is still there drawing a big part of those pay-per-views and making that kind of money and generating that kind of interest. You really start to understand what she's about and how great she is. But, for me, it's been a bit of a tough road as far as it goes with Ronda and kind of getting it, which is crazy for me to think because, like, Ronda's a judo player, man, and they have amazing timing. Like, they have amazing timing, and they have amazing footwork. And wrestling, a big part of it, at least the technical aspects of it, and, where to do the most important parts of it, a lot of it has to do with your footwork. But for whatever reason, I just think Ronda's having a little difficulty, perhaps. And look, I can't say shit because I never sold out a fucking stadium in my life. But I'm just kind of trying to articulate what I see as somebody who's done that to an extent. But Ronda, it's a tough one. Shotzi, to me, honestly, is more of a disappointment because Shotzi hasn't really been having great matches, man. And I remember Shotzi being able to work, evolve and do that indie style stuff. And I just think that Shotzi's at the point where, it's like if it's not indie shit, she can't do it. And she won't do it well, And basically, Shotzi's at the point where I think she can only work one type of style. And I think that style that she can work is mainly just the indie style and not being able to do like the professional, like WWE style and not be able to do a style that basically, is something that's ready for mainstream television and for prime time. You know what I'm saying? So that's kind of the disappointing part because Shotzi, a lot of her shtick, it's good. It's good. I like it. I see the potential for it to make money. I see the potential for it to be interesting. I think that potential is still there, but they got to kind of go to the drawing board with her. And I think that Ronda, to some extent, does need a ring general. I mean, we can't say that Ronda's had stinkers all the time, Here and there, yeah, whatever. It happens. But she's had great matches with Natty Neidhart. She's had great matches with Charlotte. She had a great match with Charlotte and Becky. She's been able to do her part, and those are just matches off the top of my head, but I'm sure she's done other stuff that's been great. She's had good segments with people. The talking, it might seem a little awkward, but again, it's not an easy thing to grasp. It is not. I got to say that much, but her ability to draw is there. There's always room for improvement. And more importantly, I think this plays into the booking's favor and what they're trying to accomplish at WrestleMania. Because Ronda is not really liked by the hardcores and the more vocal part of the audience. And I think that, you got to capitalize on that, and you got to make Becky the bigger star, and you got to make Becky the bigger face. And Becky's just more beloved by the fans, you know, and she, you know, people feel like she's one of their own, and you know, it works. It works. So yeah, I definitely think there's improvement here. And I'd also like to say in closing, because I know I've been yapping on a bit here. You know, I thought it was messed up that people were criticizing Jason Jordan and Brian Kendrick for producing the match, and you know, it not being good. You know, I mean, again, you know, things happen in the business. Things happen in wrestling. Not everything goes according to plan. I feel like I sound like that old WWE disclaimer that used to come on for kids not to pile drive each other in the house. But it's true. It's absolutely true. And, you know, sometimes things go wrong. And, you know, I just think that to criticize two professionals like Jason Jordan and Brian Kendrick and guys, you know, with their knowledge, I think it's a little crappy, and you know, you kind of look like a dork because these guys have actually done something in the business. But yeah, definitely a lot of room for improvement for Ronda and Shotzi.
No, absolutely. Our main event, obviously, the Bloodline, along with Sami Zayn, taking on the Brawling Brutes, along with Kevin Owens and Drew McIntyre. Great psychology in this match. Obviously, going into it, bro, you knew that the storyline was about the dissension in the group. Jey Uso not trusting Sami. Obviously, the rest of the Bloodline trying to make peace with that. And it's great. It's great long-term storytelling. You know, they highlighted the fact that Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens have been friends for 25 years. Kevin Owens was Sami Zayn's best man at his wedding. Again, everything that you want to have play out in a betrayal. You saw Sami Zayn prove himself to the Bloodline, to Roman Reigns. It's certainly, I think, going to lead down to something magical later on, maybe later next WrestleMania. We'll see. But a great War Games. I know, again, some of the purists were not happy about no color, but again, real quick here, I think a great War Games match. One of the better War Games matches they've had since Paul reintroduced the War Games, going back to 2017, excuse me. When he reintroduced War Games. I thought a hell of a match, one of the better ones in WWE history. Real quick, Pat.
Yeah, I know we kind of we went on a little bit longer than we anticipated this episode. And Dee, if you're listening, which I'm sure you are, you know, I'd really appreciate it if you could split this up maybe into 2 episodes as shorter clips, you know. But you know, we had the chance to see it together. We had come back, you know, from the Devils game, another Devils victory, and we watched it with Cash Uribe. You know, at the Uribe compound. And, I mean, dude, you know, the three of us, I think we're all kind of the same feeling, that it was just a fun, interesting match with great storytelling. The way they moved these characters along. And look, it didn't have a ton of wrestling, but it had all professional guys, all talented people involved, people that were able to play their part. And to your point, you know, a lot of the purists trashed it. I mean, look, it is what it is. They're not going to bleed. That's what they're going to do. That's how they feel, you know. There's another company that has, you know, an opportunity to make people bleed, and they can't produce it worth a shit. So, you know, it kind of cancels each other out somehow. You know, this match was just perfect. It set up so much. And by the way, did you say that Kevin Owens was Sami Zayn's best man at his wedding?
I could be wrong. Maybe it's reverse. I know they did talk about that during the broadcast, so yeah. It might be. I might have gotten that wrong. Maybe
because Sami Zayn getting laid is a tough pill to swallow. There, that's a hard one to believe, you know. But for all in all, I thought it was a fantastic match. You know, they did everything correctly that needs to be done in a modern wrestling match. They advanced the story so well. Everybody was so good. Their facials were so great. The storytelling, the Sami Uso chant, you know, the homages weren't like overbearing. You know, Kevin Owens with the Dusty Rhodes, you know, elbow pad and all this stuff, and the T-shirt, and it just everything about it was great. It advanced the storyline. I know there's people that complained about them not being main eventers, folks. Sheamus is the main eventer. If you're going to consider some of the guys in AEW's main eventers, Sheamus has been a main eventer recently since that match at Clash at the Castle. Him and Vulture main evented a Smackdown that drew 2 million people. You know, a lot of AEW programs combined can't even do that. So, you know, just saying. But all in all, great stuff. Awesome match. We see these stories advance. I can't wait for the payoff at WrestleMania.
I agree. I think great storytelling long term. We'll see how it works out. You can anticipate the bloodline turning on Sami Zayn at some point, even though he proved his loyalty. At some, you know, again, you want to create that WrestleMania moment. Who's going to be that team that finally defeats the Usos? It could be the lifelong buddies of Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn in Hollywood later on in April. But a lot has to play out before then. We'll see. But definitely, once again, WWE delivering on yet another great Survivor Series. You know how I feel about it. I'd like to go back to the format of the old teams, you know, all team matches. But all in all, bringing War Games into the Survivor Series, I think, was amazing for sure. Folks, before we wrap it up here real quick, on this day in wrestling history, some notable dates here. On the 2nd of December in 1969, good old Hoss, Dory Funk Jr. battled to a 60-minute time limit draw with the late Antonio Inoki in Osaka, Japan. This was the first NWA World Heavyweight title match that was held in Japan since 1957. Also on this day in 1974, Giant Baba won the NWA World Heavyweight title in Kagoshima, Japan, in a best 2 out of 3 falls contest against Jack Briscoe. He would lose it to Jack Briscoe exactly 1 week later. Also in 2019, NASCAR driver Kyle Busch defeated R-Truth to win the WWE 24/7 Championship. And tragically, on this day in 2020, Hall of Famer and the first ever Intercontinental Heavyweight Champion Pat Patterson passed away due to a long battle with cancer, unfortunately. And, you know, hey, and also on this day as well, on a huge Dynamite episode in Daly's Place in Jacksonville, Kenny Omega defeated Jon Moxley to become the AEW World Heavyweight Champion. It was also the first time that Sting appeared on TNT in almost 20 years since he wrestled Ric Flair on the final episode of Monday Nitro in March of 2001. Folks, all that good stuff happened on this day in pro wrestling history. Pat, before we call it a night here, it's been one of our better episodes. We really broke a lot of stuff down today. Again, folks, you can always check out the episodes via www.blogtalkradio.com/workingthemarks. Pat, real quick here, what to look out for in the next week here? Pat, are you still with us?
Yes, I'm still here. I'm sorry about that technical difficulty. Hey, Vern, can you hear me?
I can hear you, brother. Yeah.
Yeah. Not a lot to look forward to. No shows lined up yet or anything that I'm going to be doing, but just want to send a shout out to my sponsors: Noches de Colombia, El Único, La Roca, El Waterloo, Ricky's Frontier, Plan B, Trojan Ends, Red Dog Beer, Tequiza, and Zima. You know, without you guys, none of this would be possible. And, yeah, I'm just really, really thankful to be able to talk about wrestling here with you people. Take time, be kind to other people out there. Don't be an asshole. Keep watching the wrestling, but don't be one of these fucking weirdos that fucking talk shit all day on fucking social media, Fernando. I mean, I'm sorry. But, yeah, great stuff. And check me out on Patty Rican and at the Child Actors.
All right, good stuff there. Folks, again, check me out on Monday nights, 6 p.m. Eastern Time on Jersey First TV. It's available on YouTube, on LinkedIn, Twitter, as well as on Facebook Live via StreamYard. This Monday night live at 6, I will have exclusively on the show New Jersey 101.5 FM's premier host, Bill Spadia, arguably New Jersey's top conservative, will be joining me live on Monday night to talk about what's going on in New Jersey politics, some national stuff, what's going on in school boards in New Jersey. That and much more, folks. Check it out this Monday live at 6 p.m. with 101.5 FM's Bill Spadia joining Real Talk with Fernando Uribe, again on Jersey First TV. Folks, shoot us an email, workingthemarks@gmail.com. If what you like about the show, what you don't like about the show. Again, as we enter the month of December, we'll be bringing a show back to you next week again, try to get as many shows as we can in before the end of the year. Make sure you check us out also on Instagram at working_the_marks. Also, make sure you check out Patty Rican, again, the PBR superstar, at his Instagram at PADDYRICAN. It seems like my shadow ban is gone on Instagram, thank the Lord, according to my metrics, at the Fernando Zone. Also, check us out on Twitter, ladies and gentlemen. You can check out the PBR superstar at Patrick SKBM. Also, check out my own Twitter, folks. Nice to see that Elon Musk is doing good stuff for free speech on Twitter for both of us here. Again, at the Fernando Zone. Hey, man, you know, free speech is back on Twitter, baby. Thank you, Elon, for bringing back free speech, you know, on Twitter. But, folks, most importantly, check us out, www.blogtalkradio.com/workinthemarks. Shout out to Famcast Media for also partnering with us to bring you our episodes. Also, a big hug to Dee Rotten, I won't mention his government name, for obviously doing a lot to monitor the show, to be a great administrator of the website, and also on our theme music. Folks, always remember, if we're talking about it, you're listening. Always, because every single week here on Blog Talk Radio, better than anybody else, we are working the marks. I am New Jersey's premier award-winning journalist, Fernando Uribe, and he is New Jersey's premier wrestling analyst, the illustrious, the glorious, the best Grinch out there, folks, during the holiday season, the PBR superstar, Patrick Rivera. He's, again, my amazing host here on the show. Folks, we'll see you next week here on Blog Talk Radio. In the meantime, keep on talking. Please party responsibly. And do me a favor, just watch wrestling and stop your bitching and moaning, because at the end, aren't there many things that are fun anymore? Keep wrestling fun, bro. Keep sports entertainment fun. Stop the bitching and moaning. Just enjoy it like we all like to enjoy our things. And we'll see you next week here, folks, on Blog Talk Radio.
Bah humbug!
Famcast Media.